All right, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse. A plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are currently in Genesis chapter 22, Genesis chapter 23. This kind of will be sort of a short study because it's not that long, but it does deal with the death of Sarah and then the death and burial. Interesting enough, Isaac is not talked about, even though he is the promised son. We have very little in terms of his actual life. We'll see that as we move on. So we see here Sarah comes to her end. Let's read verse 1. Now Sarah lived 127 years. These were all the years of her life. Sarah died in Kirtha Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abram went to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Now, let me unpack some of this because notice it says Sarah lived 129 years. So she lived about 37 years with Isaac. She was 90 when she gave birth to Isaac. So, and that's, I mean, not the, you probably would want more without a doubt, but when we consider she was 90 and she could not have children, the anguish, as I said before, Sarah's life, the anguish of her life, for in that time when women could not even have children, and then the worst would be they couldn't produce male heirs. Okay, so when she gave birth to Isaac, it was a vindication. It was a proud way to go, and on top of that, she was able to spend about 37 years with him, right? 38 years, okay? And then she dies, okay? Sarah was a very interesting person. She was of course, the mother of the faith, right? And an extremely beautiful woman. We saw at the age of 65, she was stunning. That men would, like the Egyptians, like, oh, Master got to have her with wife. And then, of course, Abimelech at the age of 90. Now, I just want you to keep that in mind. At the age of 90, men were fawning over Sarah. Okay, so Abraham, God had blessed Abraham with a beautiful wife. One of these things, I would like to say that Sarah may have been beautiful inside and out. She grew in her faith. Sarah grew in her faith. At the beginning, she wasn't the godliest person. Look how she treated Hagar. But the Bible tells us, Peter tells us, and the book of Hebrews tells us, that she grew in her faith and came to trust in God. And we should also note that now, when you kind of step back, we talk about submission, and Peter talks about it in 1 Peter chapter 2 and chapter 3. And I'm just going to mention this quickly, only because this is a short lesson here. Sarah is used as an example of women in their submission to God. But it should be noted that in her submission to God, God honored her and Abraham submitted to her. Think about that. When Hagar, first, of course, Sarah messed up by giving her husband to Hagar. Hagar got a little too big-headed. And then, but when Isaac was mocking and Sarah go, oh no, throw them out, Abraham didn't want to But God said to Sarah, listen to your wife, okay? Now that doesn't mean that you women are always going to be granted that. But the point is that Sarah grew in her faith. And that's the point I want to bring out here. She grew in her faith. Okay? And she was honored as then the mother of faith in that respect. Alright, so we're going to later see that Isaac was sort of a mama's boy, and he was deeply affected by this, but we'll see that in the next chapter. So verse 3 says, Abraham got up from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. I'm a foreigner. I'm a foreign resident among you. Give me burial site among you so that I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, listen to us, Lord. You are God's chosen one among us. Bury your dead in the finest burial place. None of us will withhold from you his burial place for burying your dead. Again, notice this. God's chosen one. They are acknowledging the God of Abraham. Verse 7. Then Abraham rose and bowed down to the Hittites and the people of the land. He said to them, if you are willing for me to bury my dead, listen to me and ask Ephron, the son of Zohar, on my behalf to give me a cave of, I think it is Machpelah, that belongs to him. It is at the end of his field. Let him give it to me in your presence for the full price and the burial price. Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, so in the presence of the Hittites who came to the gates of the city. Now remember, I told you the guys basically sat at the gate. What they did was they sat at the gate of the city and chewed the cud and talked and everything else, but they did also conduct business. Oftentimes they would conduct civil business and also government business for the little villages and the city. So the exchange here is almost like a typical business back and forth, how they used to do things. Even though they're going to say, oh, you don't owe me any money. He's going to say, no, I'm going to pay you. No, you don't owe me any money. Oh, I'm going to pay you. Come on, man. Oh, okay. Well, if you just insist, I don't know. What is the thing for me? Okay, give me such and such and such. They're going to haggle back and forth with each other. And that's what you see what they do. In other words, the guy never meant, I'll give it to you for free. Because if Abraham had said, okay, then, but it's always just haggling back and forth here. Verse 11. He says, no, my Lord, listen to me. I give you the land, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. Abraham bowed down to the people in the land. He said to Ephraim in his phrase, the people of the land, please listen to me. Let me pay the price of the field. Accept it from me, and let me bury my dead. Ephraim answered Abraham and said, my Lord, listen to me. Land is worth 400 shekels of silver, but what is that between me and you, right? Abraham, what is that between? It's worth 400. Okay, if you just, what's it worth 400? But what is that between you and me? Verse 16, Abraham agreed with Ephron, and Abraham weighed out to Ephron, the silver that he had agreed to in the presence of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, and the current commercial rate. So Ephraim field at Marsha near Miraphon field, but this cave and all the trees anywhere within the boundaries of the field became Abraham's possession in the presence of all the Hittites who came to the gate of the city. After this, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave of that field at Machpelah near Marah, that is Hebron, okay, in the land of Canaan. And the field with this cave passed from the Hittites to Abraham as a burial place. Now, a couple of things I want to say about this in terms of why this may be important is because as we move on in Genesis, so Sarah is buried there. Isaac, actually, Abraham and Sarah will be buried there. So Sarah is the first to be buried there. And why is that important? Because Abraham will go on to marry another woman, have other kids. But he will be buried with Sarah. That's interesting. Isaac and Rebekah would be buried there. And what would be interesting is when Joseph, now remember Joseph loved Rachel, but Leah was forced on him through trickery. But it is Leah who would be buried. And I think that's God giving Leah honor because she was despised all of her life. So that's to me when we see the kind of burial place that is going on here between as Abraham is now establishing this. It's also going to be established that Abraham will be buried with Sarah, not his new wife. Like the new wife, like why I'm not buried in there, and that's because it's a whole other kind of thing there. So anyway, so we see the end of life of Sarah. Now, as we move in the next chapter, we're going to see Isaac. As I said, he was quite close to his mother, and that he's going to take his mother's death extremely hard. And so we will see his marriage that will kind of bring him out of that depression, the grieving depression that he was going through. His mother probably kept him close because she was, of course, that was her only child, and it was a place of honor that God had given her. But the fact that she took honor in the birth, okay. All right, guys. Chapter 24 in the next chapter. I will see you then.